If your abandoned cart flow is just sending reminder or discount emails, you're probably thinking about it in the wrong way, because abandoned cart is not just a follow-up sequence. It's one of the highest intent moments in your entire customer journey. Think about it. Somebody literally made it all the way to the checkout and still didn't buy. That's a huge conversion opportunity. But most brands build abandoned cart and checkout flows like a basic reminder sequence instead of an actual conversion system. And that difference can mean a lot of recovered revenue. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly how we build a high converting abandoned cart flow in 2026. For context, my name is Nick. I'm the founder of Barb's Media. We help e-commerce brands build better email and SMS systems. And across the 50 plus brands that we've worked with, we've seen firsthand what separates abandoned cart flows that print money from the ones that barely move the needle. So the first thing to understand is that most abandoned cart flows are technically set up, but strategically weak. Meaning, yes, the automation does exist, and maybe a few emails go out, an SMS gets sent, but that doesn't actually mean the system is well built. Most brands treat abandoned cart like a reminder sequence. For example, hey, you left something behind, then maybe another touch, then of course a discount. And sure, that can recover some revenue, but it's lazy and can definitely be optimized. Because the real question isn't, did they abandon their cart? The real question is, why didn't they buy? Was it because shipping was too expensive? Did they get distracted? Was the price too high? Did they need more trust? Were they comparing alternatives? Did they just need a little more time? These are all completely different buyer scenarios. But most abandoned cart flows treat all of them exactly the same. Same messaging, same timing, same offer, same sequence. That's where performance falls apart. Your strong abandoned cart flows don't just remind, they persuade, they address friction, they reduce uncertainty, and ideally, they adapt based on things like whether they're a new or returning customer, cart value, product category, where exactly in the lifecycle journey did they drop off, and whether email and SMS are actually working together properly. That's when abandoned cart stops being a generic automation and starts becoming a real conversion system. Just a quick side note here, if you're running an e-commerce brand and this kind of strategic breakdown is useful, subscribe below. I'll be putting out a lot more content around retention, lifecycle marketing, and backend growth systems in the future. So if the goal isn't just to remind people, the next question is, why did they leave in the first place? Because cart abandonment is not one single behavior. It's actually a bunch of completely different buyer scenarios that all get lumped into the same automation. Maybe they got distracted. Maybe they were literally checking out and their dog started barking. Maybe shipping showed up and it was more than they expected. It's possible they're also comparing you against 2 or more other brands. Maybe they actually like the product, but they just never heard of you before and they don't quite trust you yet. It's also possible that the product question wasn't answered in some of the details. So maybe they have questions about sizing, returns, materials, delivery timelines, and of course, they might just be waiting for a discount. It's also possible they just weren't ready to buy that day, and this is where most brands get it wrong. They build one generic sequence that assumes every abandoned cart customer needs exactly the same message. But actually, this doesn't really make any sense because someone who got distracted needs a completely different nudge than someone who just doesn't trust your brand yet. So the way I think about abandoned cart is this. Every touch in the sequence should solve a different friction point. One email might simply recover intent, another builds trust, another handles objections, and another introduces urgency. And that's how you build persuasion into the system instead of just sending reminders. So what does a strong abandoned cart flow actually look like? Here's a structure we use as a starting point. Not because every brand should copy this exactly, but it's more the psychology behind it that matters. So email 1 should always be simple. This one goes out fairly quickly, usually within an hour. And the goal here is not to overcomplicate anything. They just show buying intent, they add it to cart, and possibly they just got distracted. So this email is simply just a clean reminder, product focused, direct, low friction, really nothing fancy. Email 2 is where the strategy starts, because if they didn't convert after the reminder, something probably did actually get in the way. So this is where you can start addressing objections. Maybe shipping felt expensive, maybe they were unsure about sizing, and maybe they just didn't trust the quality. So this email should reduce friction, not just repeat the same message louder. Email number 3 is about reinforcement. So at this point, they've seen the product, they've seen the reminder, still haven't moved. Now we can start to build confidence. This is where we see things like customer reviews, user-generated content, founder messaging, press mentions, bestseller validation, and stronger product benefit framing can work really well. Because for a lot of buyers, uncertainty kills the purchase. Then email 4 is where you can introduce urgency or an incentive if the brand allows for it. And I say if intentionally, because I think a lot of brands rush way too fast to get to discounts. Not every abandoned cart needs bribing. But depending on the brand, this could be something like free shipping, time-sensitive offer, low inventory messaging, some sort of bonus, and of course, yes, a discount when used carefully. Then of course, there's SMS, and this is where a lot of brands can get annoying. SMS should not just be email copied into text format. It should be short, high intent, direct, an easiest path back to checkout, and make sure to use it with restraint, because if it feels spammy, you've already lost the channel. Ultimately, the big takeaway here is this. The goal is not to send more messages. The goal is to send the right message based on why they probably left in the first place. So how to segment the flow? Now, once you're at a certain scale, one generic abandoned cart flow is probably not the best optimization. Sure, if you're a smaller brand, honestly, you can probably just keep this simple for now, but once you start getting hundreds or even thousands of abandonments every month, you can really take advantage of conditional splits and flow filtering into the flow itself. The biggest split I think about first is new customer versus returning customer. That changes everything. So if it's a new customer, you can assume that the friction is usually trust. You may have interest in the product, but they haven't bought from you before. So questions start creeping in. Is this brand legit? How's the quality? What if sizing is off? What's the return process like? How long does shipping usually take? That buyer usually needs reassurance. And don't forget, if you've offered them a first purchase welcome discount, another obvious question here is, have they actually used that discount? Because if they haven't used it already, it can absolutely influence how you handle the recovery. You've already offered them to before, so you don't lose any brand equity in offering it again. And returning customers are a little different. Trust usually isn't the issue anymore. It's more about convenience, timing, habit, or value. And this is where you can start thinking a little differently. Are they a VIP customer? Are they part of your membership or loyalty ecosystem? Do they typically buy at a higher price point? Because someone who's already made the purchase from you multiple times before may not need the same persuasion as a first-time buyer. They may just need the right nudge. So that doesn't mean you need to overbuild this, but if you're doing decent volume, these are the kinds of segmentation decisions that actually make sense. Because once you understand who abandoned the cart, the messaging gets a whole lot easier to get right. So what to track? The last piece here is measurement. And honestly, I think a lot of brands overcomplicate this. So the goal of abandoned cart is pretty simple. Recover the sale and preserve as much brand value and margin as possible. That's really it. So I'm not obsessing over vanity engagement metrics here, like open rates, click rates. Sure, they can be directional, but they're not the actual goal. What I really care about here is conversion. Placed order rate, of course, is the big one. How effective is this flow in actually recovering abandoned checkouts? That's the core KPI. Then, of course, if you're using incentives, I care a lot about discount dependency, because there's a big difference between recovering a customer because your C-what's persuaded them and recovering them because you immediately bribed them. Those are not equally healthy outcomes. I'd also look at conversion by message because, for example, if email 1 is doing all the heavy lifting and the rest of the sequence contributes almost nothing, that should tell you something. Same if your final incentive email is carrying the entire flow. That may mean your earlier messaging isn't doing enough. And if you segmented the flow, and obviously compare performance by segment, because new customers behave differently than returning ones. VIPs behave differently than first-time buyers. And so the point is not to make reporting complicated. The point is to really understand, is this flow actually covering conversions in a healthy way? And zooming out for a second, abandoned cart is really just one piece of the puzzle, because if all you have are a few basic automations running in the background, you don't really have a conversion system. You just have automations. And when customer acquisition keeps getting more expensive, that gets costly real fast. So if you want help actually building out an email and SMS system that converts more first-time buyers, drives more repeat purchases, and turns retention into a real growth channel, there's a link in the description where you can check out more of our work. But before you go, the next video I'd watch is this one right here, where I break down the full e-commerce email strategy we use to create more repeat buyers and increase customer lifetime value with our own clients. That'll probably be even more valuable than this one. See you there.